Hello again, everyone. Welcome to today's Fireside Chat, Mustard Hub Voices Behind the Build. Here we talk with the people building, backing, and running better workplaces. I'm your host, Curtis Forbes. My guest today is Joshua Siler. Josh is the founder and CEO of HiringThing, the award-winning recruiting platform that enables thousands of companies everywhere to tackle recruiting challenges. Josh is highly focused on delivering great technology and brings both an engineering and product management background to HiringThing. Prior to starting HiringThing, he served as a VP of technology for a relationship marketing agency where he designed marketing strategies and innovative software solutions for clients. When not building great software, Josh can be found building in the woodshop and volunteering with his local SCORE chapter. Thanks for joining us today, Josh.
Pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, of course. We chatted with Tevis Paxton, a member of the team, on the show a little while ago. It was a great chat. Got to learn a little bit about what you guys do. So you set the bar kind of high.
Yeah. Well, Tevis always does, so I'm happy to follow in his footsteps and do the best I can to share a little more.
I'd love to hear a little bit about what you do with SCORE. How did you get involved in helping small businesses, in your community?
Well, so I've always been an entrepreneur, and I really just enjoy the process of starting and growing businesses. And the last time I did it, it stuck, so I didn't get to do that anymore, right? So I've been with HiringThing for 15 years. I don't get to start new businesses anymore. And so to scratch that itch, I was living in Colorado at the time. I started working with a local small business incubator to just kind of share some of my insights with brand new entrepreneurs and small businesses. And I found that really rewarding. I kind of get to live vicariously through other entrepreneurs and hear about what they're up to and help them kind of brainstorm how to take it to the next level. And so when I moved to Portland, I was looking for another opportunity to do that and started getting involved with the SCORE organization. And they're a great organization. Basically, it's volunteer mentorship for small businesses. And so I've worked with everything from a crypto entrepreneur to a local taco truck to somebody doing a clothes startup, all sorts of different businesses I get to work with, and it's really enjoyable to work with different folks and find out what they're doing.
That sounds kind of interesting. Being able to kind of take your engineering and product perspective to retail or
Yeah, exactly. And I've done the finance, and I've done the sales, I've done the
yeah.
marketing, so I can really take a 360 look, and some of the things that maybe they haven't been in business for a long time, or they've been in a totally different field. I can kind of help perspectives from maybe a different way of doing things.
I love that. And I love talking to other tech founders and learning about kind of how they got where they are. So I'd really like to hear more about your journey. Talking about pre-hiring thing and also that whole journey. What path brought you to creating the company and going in the direction that you did?
Sure. Yeah, I'd be happy to talk about it. So I started as a software engineer, and I was kind of building some of the first online hosted applications, and a lot of in marketing automation is what I was working on for many years. I did a little business intelligence, a little this and that along the way, but really that's where a bulk of my career was spent in marketing automation. And I really enjoyed it. For me, it was always the building of the thing was the most exciting thing. And so I ended up being VP of technology at an agency, and of course we were always hiring, and I was really just frustrated with the process there. I would get an email full of Indeed resumes as attachments and have to like manually sort through all those. Really painful. And when you got a hammer, everything looks like a nail, right? So I'm like, well, I'm going to build a better system to manage this, and started tinkering with a better way to do it. And over the course of a couple of years, I ended up with a pretty robust kind of internal application that we were using to manage hiring. And at some point, it kind of occurred to me, okay, this really could be its own thing. And so I reached out to the local SHRM group. I got some beta testers. They started using it and loving it. And that at that point, it's time to raise money. So I went out and started talking to angel investors, and eventually spun that out into its own company, which became HiringThing.
I love that, and I love how you keep referring to it as developing that thing, and it kind of became its own thing, and now it's hiring thing.
Right.
how did how did Tell me about the genesis for the name? What made you come up with that name?
Oh boy, it was so I worked in an agency, so we had all sorts of processes for brains name work, right? And which usually involve long meetings with whiteboards and 10 people in the room, and so we did kind of an exhaustive uh review of a bunch of ideas and spent a bunch of time kind of crossing things out, and hiring thing is the one that stuck. It's a little playful, and we're going to market in a time when SaaS was kind of reaching its boom. A lot of companies weren't using SaaS software yet, but it
Right.
was clearly established as something that was going to be the future of software, and so we wanted a little playful vibe at the same time, really clearly communicating what we're doing, and that's what we ended up with.
I love it. I think that's awesome. So before we kind of get into, I think what hiring thing is and who you work with, um, I'd just be curious to hear in general what attracted you to working in tech, but kind of more specifically, what brought you to that sort of the HR, right? I mean, you worked at a marketing agency and you were building some things to help solve this problem with your, obviously your ATS, right? But there were a bunch of different things. I would imagine you had listed a few of them, right? That you were
Sure.
working on. What made you kind of go all in on that space?
Well, my passion was building online software, right? And database driven applications. And that has really always been the thing for me. I started work right when the internet started happening. And that was, the first software I built was not online, but then quickly I was mostly building online software, and every day it was kind of a revolution in software, something new, and that was just really exciting to me. So I really gained a lot of expertise in building online software, web applications, and so that was really my focus. And I was not an HR expert. In fact, quite the opposite. I was just frustrated with the way the HR stuff worked and the HR experts were doing things, and
Hmm.
wanted to build something that did it better. And so, for better or worse, that probably helped me, right? I'm an HR expert now, 15 years later, right?
Yeah.
I know a hell of a lot about HR. But at the time, I was just really looking to apply my skills as a technologist to a problem I was having and make it work better. And that was my passion. And, I always liked running companies. I always wanted to run a company. I had run a couple others before that, got acquired or fizzled out. Over the years. We all have that string of ups and downs, and uh, and so I wanted to do it again. And this was a problem that I had a solution for that looked like it could be universally enjoyed by other companies, and so that's kind of what took it to market for me. It wasn't that I would knew all about HR and was an HR expert. It was more I saw a problem, and I knew that I could use my skills to do it better, and that's what led me down the path.
And you did it internally, and I find a lot of tools really, a lot of incredibly, successful startups are built out of some sort of internal development to solve a problem that they're having where there aren't solutions in the market to solve that, right? Once you figure out, you build something internally that seems to work incredibly well, you figure that there's probably a lot of other companies or systems, right, that could wind up benefiting from that. So
Yeah, beyond building internally, I find one of the biggest markers of success for software companies is building their initial thesis around somebody's real problem, and building a solution in place with the business flow. And it's much harder when you think you've got a great idea and you build the great idea and then go see who might buy it. Much more difficult to take software to market that way. And there's been successes, but also a lot more failures. And the companies that I do see succeed are the ones that build software to solve someone's immediate business problem, and it's used for business stuff from day one, versus as soon as we're done in 12 to 18 months, then we'll be ready for someone to use the software. That's much more difficult to find that
yeah.
product market fit for.
Yeah, that's fair. So Tell us all about Hiring Thing now. Give me an overview of what Hiring Thing is all about.
Sure. Yeah. So, at the core, we're recruiting software. So we help companies post jobs online, manage applicants, hire great employees. That's what the software does for folks. And it has a zillion little features. We've been under active development for 15 years. We've got every little edge case under the sun kind of managed in the platform. And we do that for, we have some 20,000 customers with access to our with software. And it works great for that. But on top of that, we have an additional level of complexity. We offer our software as a white label solution, which means that other companies can take our recruiting platform and embed it in their software under their own brand and create an integrated experience. And this works really well for us. Our partners are kind of the lifeblood of our business, and we really are focused on helping them have a great recruiting platform as part of their offering so that they can worry about their core focus, their primary value proposition, and we can help them make sure that they're competitive when it comes to comparing features to maybe what their competitors have for full stack back office.
Tell us about some of these. Now we don't have to name names if you don't want to, but tell us about some of these partners. What do they look like? The majority of the folks that you tend to work with.
A number of different types. We have HRAS companies that maybe have a payroll solution
Okay.
and they don't have recruiting, and their customers want more full-featured HR software, so we can help them fill that gap with recruiting. Also, we work with vertical SaaS companies that are maybe filling a need for a particular vertical, and they say we do everything for your vertical. Well, one of those everythings is recruiting, right? And so if they're more focused on maybe the warehouse operations and the service delivery or something like that, but they need to have more HR capabilities, we can
Mhm.
help them fill that kind of gap. And then we also work with HR solutions companies that maybe do a services and software combo where they're delivering a pile of value to a company and they want to be full service. We can help them include recruiting in that service offering, and they can use our software to help them deliver on a bigger kind of recruiting package.
Yeah. So, I'm curious, and you know, I obviously saw the booth at HR Tech. We were able to connect there, and so much of that
Such a big
content.
show.
It was enormous, and so much of it was about AI and the adoption of this kind of technology and so many of these platforms. I'm curious, like, how does Hiring Thing has it started to incorporate that kind of technology as part of your software solution?
We have, yeah, absolutely, and that's moving really quickly. It's certainly becoming basically a required part of business to business software these days. And so we have a number of AI features today so that people love. One is AI job description, so you can click a button and it'll write a job description for you, which
Oh wow.
works
Okay.
really well. And you can tweak it and kind of chat with AI there. But that's something customers have been asking for years. They wanted a big library of all the job descriptions available, and this gives us the ability to deliver that really easily. We also have AI pay rate range exploration, so you can put in a title and a location, and we'll use AI to help you kind of bracket what the pay range might be for that role.
Hmm.
And then we have AI resume analysis, so you can click on any applicant, and we will take their resume and the job description, and have AI do an analysis of how well this particular applicant meets the points required in the job description. So that kind of helps you sort through all your applicants. And what we're finding is
Yeah.
that AI is really changing the recruiting landscape right now in unpredictable ways, right?
Yeah.
So companies are using it, not just our customers, but a lot of companies are using AI to write their job descriptions,
Yeah.
and applicants are using AI to write their resumes, and companies are using AI to match resumes to job descriptions, right? So where does it end? Uh, One of the interesting things is that companies are getting more and more applicants with perfectly form fit resumes now, and that
Mhm.
makes it really hard to kind of sort between applicants.
Yeah.
There are tools that allow an applicant to apply for 1,000 jobs, And why wouldn't they? There's no incremental cost to them, right? You're looking for a
Mhm.
job. Why wouldn't I apply for 1,000 jobs? Well, you could pay an AI tool to craft your AI resume and send it to 1,000 companies. And so companies are getting inundated with these applications, and it becomes more important than ever that they have a tool that helps them kind of
Yeah.
sort through that stack and find the right application. What this looks like in the long term is hard to say, but it's changing really quickly right now.
Yeah, I think that first of all, I can see how that would appeal to so many people and be incredibly useful. I know that some HR leaders are cautious from a lot of the, from the new technology. Do you think that HR leaders are, if you had to make a general statement here, tech ready, particularly when it comes to AI?
Oh, well, with AI, I mean, no one knows what the end game is here. So I don't think if anyone says they're tech ready for exactly what AI is going to bring, they're not telling the truth, because no one really knows where this is ending. There's a
Yeah.
lot of factors at play that are all changing really quickly, and sometimes they're at odds with each other. So it's difficult to predict where that's going to end out. I think that there's definitely some adaptation that has to happen as things are changing really quickly. And traditionally HR has been a status quo kind of function within companies. It's been done this way, and we always do it
Mhm.
this way. And that kind of mentality is not serving companies well right now with
Yeah.
the way how quickly things are changing. There's a lot of questions about how these AI tools ethically should be used as part of the hiring process,
Right.
right? Because does anybody want AI evaluating whether the right fit for a job? No, you want a person to look at your application and consider you, and it feels very dehumanizing to just be weeded out by AI. But that's where it's going, right? And there's already lawsuits against companies for using AI for
Right. Yeah.
recruiting, and that's going to continue. That's not going to suddenly stop because of these lawsuits, but it's going to evolve. And where that turns into, anybody's bet. I could see a future where maybe the planetary supercomputer decides where you work, right? And you get an email one day and said you've been reassigned. Here's your new job, and we've determined this is the right job for you, right? And maybe it's always right, so people just go along with it. I don't know. That's wild speculation, but you could see it.
Can you imagine that world? It makes me wonder, like, maybe not even this idea of being tech ready. I think that certainly we don't know, right? We don't we don't know what that end game is, but just the hurdles, that a lot of organizations, might have by adopting tools that are so heavily reliant on AI, right? So you start to have this disconnect where, you know, individual contribution, right, is or can decrease to some extent, right, with
Hmm.
the reliance on AI. Where's that middle ground? Do you hear people who have concerns? What are the next steps for, if you can even share, for HiringThings, and how it embraces what, more it can even do with sourcing, right? Beyond just, the resume, creating the resume or analyzing those type of things. There's a buffet of directions you could go in, right?
Yeah, well, we certainly have an active line of development in moving our AI stuff forward, right? And absolutely we have to, because it is becoming an expected part of the stack. But we're also cognizant of the fact that companies can get their social license revoked because of AI, right? Through lawsuits and negative press. And there are some of our customers that said, "I don't want any of that. I've turned all that crap off," right?
Really?
And so we actually have a global AI switch that turns it
Oh,
all
wow.
off for a
Okay.
customer if they want it all off. Now that's becoming less of a thing as people just realize that it's a reality, but we have to walk those lines really carefully. There's some real questions around, for example, bias. And, we know that bias is baked into every company, regardless of you say, "Oh, we're not going to be biased." Well, there's something there because you're people and you're evaluating other people, and you
Right.
come at it from your own particular lens. And it's forcing some kind of more nuanced discussion about what bias actually means, and what kind of biases are structural, what kind are inherent, and how do we manage those. Does a completely unbiased AI exist? Is that even possible? Is that even desirable? Those are questions that we really need to root out, because there's going to be a legal framework
Yeah.
around
Yeah.
using AI in recruiting and HR at some point. It probably won't be written by law, but it'll be written by precedent from lawsuits that come through,
Mhm.
and no one knows what that looks like yet. So it's encouraging some healthy debate, but you also have to be careful. I think it's really easy to develop an AI recruiting tool that really isn't going to last, because it falls afoul of various laws and various social norms, and would really quickly create some negative kickback. Really easy to create that.
It on a sort of a tangential note, it makes me curious, when it comes to the resume analysis, right? We have a job description, we have resume analysis. We want to bring people on our team who have the requisite skills that we need to do the job that needs to be done, but there's an enormous culture component, right? Every person, right, that we bring into our organization brings a little bit of culture with them, right? Everyone
Uh-huh.
that leaves the organization takes a little bit of takes a little bit of culture with them. And is it possible? Is it possible now, or do you see it being possible in the future, where these tools can account for things like that, or is that where that human element is really still needed?
I mean, the human element is absolutely needed, right? And if you get a random person dropped into your team that no one from your team has talked to or looked at, and they are a radically different type of thinker, or they do
Yeah.
things radically different than the way you do it, then that's probably not going to work out, right? If you take someone who is incredible at working at a command and control organization off a three-ring binder and does everything by the book all the time, and they're really great at that, they might be a perfect fit for some jobs. But if you have more of a free organization that is about kind of personal ownership, and things are more fluid all the time, they'll crash and burn really quickly.
Right.
So those kind of things absolutely have to be taken into account, and the personal conversations are really the only way to discover those. If you try to classify and categorize the things that make somebody fit from a culture perspective, it quickly devolves into some really heated discussion, right? And we've seen those in society over the years, with DEI coming and being maybe a little bit out now. Those are still relevant, though, and for a while, people were deriding, oh, culture, that just means you're looking for another Stanford bro to join your team, right? And that absolutely was the case in some times, in places, and absolutely was harmful in some places, because you don't want to create a monoculture. You want
Right.
diversity of opinion. But you also want people who fit in with the way your people work, the way you want your company to work. And how we walk that line, I think, is really complicated and very nuanced. And you're right, it comes down to people. People need to be the ones who are deciding it. You can't automate that kind of chemistry discussion away.
Yeah. How do we empower the HR leaders, the practitioners, the teams to get really fully on board with how they're using? Because one of the things you mentioned, some people, which I thought was really interesting, some people just don't want any of it, just shut it all off. Right.
Uh-huh.
Some folks might use some of it. It scares some people. Right. There's a lot of folks who have concerns about it. There's a lot of folks who simply want to use as much of it as they can, because they see the value in that. How do we empower those folks to just fully, to kind of get on board with all of these things and try it and use it and see how it can help?
Well, what I see the most effective AI deployments today are the ones that you don't even know AI is involved. And I think that as a software designer perspective, that's really the goal, is to have it be invisible to you, and it just smooths everything along and makes everything a little better, and you don't know that it's AI. You can't do that right now, right? Because people need to know when AI is involved, because AI can make mistakes, and people need to be more on edge to evaluate those mistakes. But there's plenty of places where AI doesn't make mistakes very often and works just fine and is chugging along behind the scenes to make everything a little bit better in really subtle ways.
Yeah.
Like your phone will give you a little summary of the text message you've received the last day.
Right.
Useful,
Right.
it kind of, oh, I got 10 messages in the family chat, but it's about so and so's birthday, right? I don't need to check that right now. That's useful and kind of invisible, right? You kind of know it's AI at some level, but you're not like, oh, what's AI telling me now? It's just your phone is giving you a little summary, right? And so I see it becoming more of a blended, seamless part of our lives rather than something that stands apart. And that's probably where the adoption comes. I think there'll be AI deniers probably till the end of time, right? Like
Mhm.
the Luddites back when the weaving looms came out. Like there's always gonna be deniers and people that hate the new technology and don't want anything to do with it, for
Yeah.
better or for worse, right? They can have their opinion, they can live their life without it, and maybe their life is better if they keep it out of their life. Absolutely, but I think there's no question it's going to be much more pervasive going forward.
I like that. I mean, one thing I'd love as a huge takeaway from this. I mean, I feel like that needs to be framed and memed inside of LinkedIn or Facebook is, you know, this idea that when you don't even know it's there, like that is going to be, um,
It's
that's
already the case, right? Yeah, but it's going to be more and more. It'll be under
yeah,
everything, and we just won't notice it until it breaks, right? And then
absolutely, exactly.
something will explode. I think we still haven't had our big AI catastrophe
Yeah,
that
not
is
yet.
probably inevitable. At some point, something
Right.
is going to go terribly wrong because AI was running the show and it made a mistake. But
Yeah,
we haven't really seen that yet, or maybe
yeah,
it's happened and people aren't telling us that what happened exactly. But
yeah, yeah.
those kinds of things are going to happen. But I think eventually it's going to be completely invisible and seamless.
Well, getting back to what hiring thing does, I'm aside from some obvious, I think, knowledge gaps when it comes to tech. What do you see as the biggest, challenges in hiring today? Is it different for different kinds of organizations or different sizes of organizations, worker classifications, locations? Give me kind of your assessment on what you see as some of the biggest challenges.
Well, it's certainly changing really quickly, and we've seen a big sea change from over the last few years, just in particular in the how hot the labor market is, right? So if we look back at 2022, kind of post COVID, we were having a huge boom. Companies could not find people; they were desperate to hire. We
Mhm.
had a 40-year high in the number of openings available, and so really it was how can I get more
Wow.
applicants? How can I get more applicants? Right? Those were the things we were hearing. The job market steadily cooled, and last week, Jerome Powell, head of the Fed, said that job creation is essentially zero in this economy. And so what we're seeing is that companies are posting fewer jobs and they get way more applicants per job than they did before. Now, this is compounded by these new tools that allow anybody to apply for everything all the
Right.
time, right? And so the big thing people are fighting with today is every time I post a job, I get so many applicants. How do I find the right person, right? And in a tight job market where there's fewer jobs, we're seeing a rise in people going back to networking, right? They want to have people that they have references for that they know that they've talked to, right? And so they're looking
Yeah.
like in our system, they'll flag those applicants as referrals, sort those to the top of the list, right? I want to know who was referred because I have 10,000 applicants, right? How do I know which ones to pick? Well, the one that get recommended to me by someone
Yeah.
is a clear winner in that kind of environment.
Right.
And so that's a big part of it is just figuring out how to deal with this new situation where instead of having a hard time finding anyone to apply, you have way too many applicants, and making sure you have a disciplined process to manage that.
Well, that was going to kind of be my next question is what do you think some employers are doing right, when it comes to hiring? I mean, we obviously have some challenges, do you see trends that make you sort of optimistic for leaders that are building this workforce?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's important to be really intentional about what you're looking for. And in the past, they'd see more like, okay, we're going to open this roll up, and let's see what type of folks apply, and then we'll use that to inform what might be successful in this role, right? Because they're looking for someone who's smart and a go getter and fits with their culture, and we'll hire that person, right? There was more of that. Now it's more people are looking to really tighten up the criteria and say,
Hmm.
okay, well, we need to make sure we have these skills. We need to make sure we have this kind of experience level. Uh, you know, they're documenting and then trying to stick to that list because it helps them weed through all the applicants, right? And they can be more intentional about exactly what they want for specific roles and maybe look to find that exact right person, where in the past maybe it was a little more open, which is unfortunate, right? I wish there was more job creation. I wish there were more opportunities for folks right now, but it looks like we're kind of hitting and hopefully it's a nadir of the business cycle, right? And it's all up from here. There's a few things that could change in the economy that might suddenly tighten up the labor market, and I'd certainly welcome that. But as it stands right now, employers are looking at kind of being spoiled for choice, and when they open up a new role, they can really look to find exactly the right person for that.
So how I guess what ultimately then defines, how hiring things roadmap? Like what are the challenges that you see in the workforce that lead you to build solutions for some of these challenges, right? I mean, obviously when folks are inundated with so many, clearly, right, it needs a solution that can help do some of that matching for them. And I think you guys kind of nailed that. Well, what do you see in the next 2 to 3 to 5 years that you're building to, hopefully address some of those things that may, that folks, I think, in the future are going to be, dealing with?
Well, certainly more AI screening is going to be part of the solution, and much to the chagrin of recruiters out there who, over the last few years have seen the number of those folks out there go down, although they still have an important role to play.
Yeah.
But that's going to be more automated in the future, and how that works exactly, we're trying to be part of that solution. We have a lot of folks thinking about it and talking about it. Fully automated selecting what employee is probably quite a ways out,
Yeah.
but is it headed that way? It may very well be. What we want to do is make sure that we're leveraging AI to kind of help you work through these processes in the most efficient manner without uh, falling afoul of what would be considered proper and appropriate and
Yeah.
respectful. And that's a hard line to walk. We really have to be
Yeah.
careful about that.
So speaking of leadership, I'm love to hear a little bit about what you think maybe like the next, a little bit about the next generation, right? Are today's leaders setting up tomorrow's leaders for success, and what should today's leaders be doing to shape tomorrow's leaders? Maybe this is some stuff that you deal with in score a lot, right? If if a lot of what we're doing at hiring thing is all pre-hire, how do you talk to other business owners, operators, and leaders about, what that looks like in the future?
Sure. Yeah. There's an interesting divide between. We've always been an all remote company, and so that really shapes our culture and my approach to leadership. But I definitely see a divergence there. I think we've seen a little bit of push to return to office with companies. Remote's not
Yeah.
working. We want to get people back in the office, and part of that is driven by the high cost of empty offices and maybe some desire to unnaturally trim their workforces, but still, there's some leaders really speaking out against remote, and that goes against kind of how we manage and what we want to do. But I definitely see where it doesn't work for some companies and some folks, and so that I think that you can manage companies different ways. There are companies that are more command and control and give a lot of very specific direction to their employees on how they want things done.
Yeah.
Part of that is having people where you can see them and creating a structure for them that kind of steers the way that they work. Being all remote is different for us, right? And I believe you should find people who are willing to take ownership and give them space to have that ownership and measure them on outcomes and output versus how long they're working at their desk or how many meetings they've been in, that kind of thing. uh, it's just a little bit different culture when you're all remote than when you're in person. And I see advantages to both. I think for some young folks, they maybe haven't benefited from an office environment. They haven't collaborated with folks as much, and it could be hard for them to be sitting at home and just interacting with their
Yeah.
colleagues through a little postage stamp all day, right? But for a lot of people, they really love it, and
Yeah.
for a lot of our employees, it's a major benefit of working from Hiring Thing is
Yeah.
we're all remote, and we give you kind of personal ownership of what your work is and let you run with it. And so I see both sides of it. It depends on what kind of organization you are and what kind of employees you have. I think leaders need to be cognizant of what kind of company they are, and in some cases, they need to put more structure and embrace that and do that. And in some cases, you need less, and you need to empower your employees. And I think that walking that line, especially when we're talking about this kind of work from home versus work in the office debate, is
Yeah.
a big part of that.
I'd love for you to maybe give us a little bit of an idea of some of the things that you do to build that culture with a remote workforce, because it's challenging, right? You don't have everybody around all of the time. You know, if some business leaders, right, or some folks maybe that you work with at Score or even through Hiring Thing, were seeking some advice on building that remote culture, what do you tell them?
Well, I can tell you what we do, and that's probably the best direction I have. One is that we try to do company wide participation in strategy. And so rather than having strategy be top down, we wanted to boil up from the bottom and get
Hmm.
ideas from everywhere. So we have, our strategy processes we do a couple times a year, really every department, everybody participating in some way and where they think the strategy should go, and using that to inform kind of what our direction is. But what that does is gives everybody a little bit of ownership for it. And ideally, what I want is every team member to feel complete ownership of what they do. And rather than being handed like, here's how you need to do it in an exact way, we say, here's the outcome we want from you. You get to choose how you do it, but get it done. And I think that kind of ownership really enables people to uh, feel some pride in their work and also hold themselves accountable for it. The other thing that we like to do is have an environment where team members can hold each other accountable in
Yeah.
positive ways, right? But you have to have checks and balances, and one way to do that is to have time cards and really specific kind of accountability frameworks that are top down. And another way to do it is to have an environment where everybody's success is interlocked and people are kind of encouraging their counterparts to hold up their part of the bargain. And that works really well for us.
It's like creating this culture essentially by giving folks ownership over essentially organizational responsibilities, right? So everybody's got skin in the game for everything, rather than just being told what to do. I love that for this next generation, right? Or maybe even not the next generation, because it's honestly not that far off with the way that the technology is so rapidly changing. I mean, would you say that maybe there's different kinds of skills or competencies that leaders are going to need to be effective? Business or technology or social skills or creative skills, and it's rare to find that leader who has everything. That the way that technology has been adopted recently, would you say that that's even more important now than ever? Do you think that leaders can still get by on extremely charismatic social and creative skills?
Well, those certainly help, and those are ones I don't have. I don't consider myself a highly charismatic leader by any means. So we all have some gaps that we're trying to fill. Uh, but I think it has to be some level of adaptivity to how people work, because I think
Mhm.
that's probably one of the big social debates we're having right now is what does AI do to people's work, right? And we
Yeah.
know that it's taking a bunch of people's jobs and kind of making them less important to the economy, right? We've seen kind of software engineers and content writers and designers. We've seen their work kind of be taken over a little bit by AI.
Yeah.
Not that there's still place for them and they're valuable, but that's a little bit of a concern. I think there's a lot of people who maybe shuffled papers or updated spreadsheets or things like that are finding themselves maybe out of work because of AI, and
Yeah.
that's obviously not fun for them. But I think we should definitely value someone who uses AI to get a bunch of stuff done, right? Because that's using the technology to the max. And we should also look at ways that people can contribute to the people portion of the work, right? And maybe there's ways that AI is taking over the automation and the punching buttons and updating spreadsheets in a way that frees us up for being more people oriented in the way we interact and work with each other in corporate
Yeah.
America. I'm speculating at this point. I don't know what's going to come. Nobody really does. But
Yeah.
at the end of the day, the economy only works if people are working, and people will find a way to work and provide
Yeah.
value. And what that looks like is bound to be different than what it is today. So, uh, finding and recognizing those changes and then exploiting them, those are the things that are going to help future leaders really succeed. Is what does the future of work really look like with it changing so rapidly right now? TBD, but if you can get there first, then it's going to give you an advantage.
I'm going to ask you for predictions. You can't do the TBD. I need real predictions here from you, Josh.
Right, the
What do
Oracle.
you see what do you see coming down the pike?
Oh, real predictions, huh?
Yeah.
I think we're in a little bit of a bubble with AI, right?
Okay.
And at this point, a lot of the AI companies are promising levels of investment in AI that, if you add them all up, exceed the GDP of the country. Like they just don't make sense, right? There's not enough compute that we could build that could match some of the things that these companies are saying, and we see that in the stock market, right? A huge valuation. Now, how long does it take a bubble like that to collapse or normalize? Well, that could be tomorrow, or it could be a long time, right? It's hard to say. But bubbles are market distortions, right? So we're in a little bit of a market distortion where all eyes are on AI, and that's the thing everybody's building. But AI doesn't feed anybody. AI doesn't build houses. It's not really part of the real economy. It's an enabler that enables us maybe to feed people more effectively. Maybe it
Mhm.
enables us to build homes more effectively. But we still have to mine the metals, log the woods, build the houses, farm the land to make food,
Mhm.
right? And those things aren't going away. So the real question is, okay, once this AI bubble does its thing, what's AI's real place in the economy, and how does it help us really enable those things that are actual production? That's the next phase, and I think that that's where kind of the winning begins for AI. Is okay. It's one thing if AI builds 5 new data centers. It's another thing if AI builds me a house. And when AI starts really building houses, that's when it's really going to be impactful.
Yeah. I like that. What do you think that your work is going to look like, I mean, to address these changes, do you see hiring thing moving into different avenues? Do you see your work changing at all?
Oh, well, certainly it already has. Like I said, in the last couple of years,
Yeah.
the focus has been definitely our focus in the past was more like how do we get people more qualified applicants, right? Now it's more on how do we help people find the most qualified of all the applicants, and then as AI kind of goes into LinkedIn and Indeed, and these companies they're promising they'll find you the best applicants, right? And
Yeah.
so sourcing is really maybe less of important for companies like ours, and we're more focused on optimizing that human part of the interaction. And to your point, humans have to be involved, right? There's no magic AI button that's going to tell you if someone is going to fit in with your team or your
Mhm.
organization. There's still an intuitive sense that we get, and we have to talk to somebody, and multiple people have to talk to somebody, and that's an important part of bringing a new employee on,
Yeah.
is letting the team talk to the person, getting some consensus on who the right person to hire is, right? You can't really have AI do that for you and then expect that person to drop in productively into your company. And so what we can do as a software company is focus on helping people optimize that human part of the process. Like, how do we get everyone scheduled, and how do we collect their feedback, and how do we make sure that we're making the right choice based on the human interactions we've had
Yeah.
before we send them off to become part of your company.
I like that. Making it human. Um, to wrap up, I love asking this question. If a business leader kind of comes to you from advice, well, this actually might be this might not be an if because you give advice all the time. When a leader comes to you and asks you for advice on how to really kind of get it right when it comes to implementing and leveraging technology in the hiring process for their organization, right? You have 1 second or a couple seconds with them. You're in an elevator up to the top floor, and before those doors open and they walk right out of there, what is that one thing that you'd tell them if you have time?
Oh, that's a tough one. Uh,
Pressure.
well, I want to talk with them a little bit first to discover what the real problems are, and at the end of the day, it comes down to what's your biggest problem, and what's the thing that's slowing you down, what's going to make you go faster, and then focus your technology on solving that. I mean, again, technology doesn't isn't it's an enabler. It's not necessarily the end thing, especially when it comes to HR. I mean, it's there to smooth the way and help you make it happen faster, better, easier. And what I typically look for are the big pain points. You're not finding somebody, or it's taking you too long, or
Mhm.
it's the productivity is low. You just can't get a bunch of positions filled, or you're hiring the wrong people, or what's the real pain point in your
Yeah.
organization, and then look for a solution to fill that specific issue. And so that could be it could be applicant tracking. It could be something like performance management, right? You
Yeah.
don't feel like you trust people are getting things done, and you don't feel like you're letting go of the people who are not succeeding quickly enough, or you're not keeping the high performers. You might want a performance management solution, or you might feel like that your old paper process for time tracking isn't really working, and you really need to get a handle on that. Okay, there's some great mobile time tracking tools that you can deploy really easily that'll help you solve that problem. But there's a wide variety of software solutions out there. Especially if you're a smaller business, you're not going to implement all of them all at once, right? Maybe
Right.
if you're an enterprise, you might have every single category of HR software out there, and that might be 10 or 20 different software packages, right? If you're a smaller business, you're just not going to do that. And so it's important to look to where you can get the most leverage from a solution, and you do that by categorizing where the problems are and where the most time savings, the most business benefit you would get by solving, and then you go there first.
I love that, right? I mean, people problems are not always just people problems. They are time problems, performance problems, hiring problems. They can be a lot of different problems. And until you really identify what that is, it's going to be hard to really solve that
Yeah, and there's
problem.
a class of HR solution for every conceivable
Yeah.
problem, right? You know, you yeah, there's a solution out there, whatever your problem is, but you got to really know what you're trying to solve for and what is going to be a successful outcome. I think before you look at any software, you should be have a really clear definition of here's what I want the post implementation future of my company to be, and have a really good picture of that.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Josh. I appreciate you being here with me today. Appreciate all the time and
That's
appreciate
been a
all of
fun
your
discussion.
insights.
Yeah,
Yeah.
thanks for having me on.
Well, for all of you who are watching or listening to this episode, thanks for tuning in to Mustard Hub Voices Behind the Build. Subscribe, like, share, and comment. Be sure to check us out at mustardhub.com to see how we help companies become destinations for workplace happiness and turn culture into a competitive edge. And sign up to get started with Mustard Hub for free while you're there. Until next time.